What's up everyone? Jeremy Gerard from Mythic Customs here with one of my short customizing tutorial videos. Today we're going to talk about swapping parts between Mythic Legions 1.0 figures and 2.0 figures. We're going to define exactly what those designations are and show you some examples of the parts that you can use between these different figure types and hopefully give you some inspiration that you can use in your own customizations. So I did write an article about Mythic Legions 1.0 versus 2.0 and some of the swappability for sourcehorseman.com. You can certainly read that article, but this will have some additional examples also. So first, the designation. When Mythic Legions first came out, that first Kickstarter wave and a number of the subsequent waves, it was the body type that people have come to call 1.0. So this barbarian builder that I have in front of me is an example of 1.0 style figure. All of those early figures, the barbarians, the orcs, the initial skeletons that were released, even the dwarves and the knights, those are all the 1.0 body type. All the parts are interchangeable. If you customize Mythic Legions, you know that you can pop these pieces apart, not just easy pieces like the head. They come with multiple heads, so the heads come off very easily, so you can pop another one on. But not only that, their arms, their legs, their feet, it all can be popped apart. There's also an article on Source Horseman about how to do that, how to use some heat to get all those apart. And there's a picture I took on there that shows the figures blown apart, all their component pieces that you may find helpful as well. So these figures were the first style that came out. The second style that came out were introduced in the Advent of Decay wave, which was also a Kickstarter. And that are these smaller figures. This is one of the Shadow Elves, but he's indicative of the figures that came out in that wave. It also included all the female figures and the goblins. All of those more slender type bodies, those are what are known as the 2.0 body types. Now, by and large, the parts between them are not interchangeable. The way that the heads go on, their neck pegs, their arms, their legs, all of these are different sizes and they're not, while you can pull a 1.0 arm off of a barbarian and pop it on an orc or vice versa or a skeleton, you can't do that with the 2.0 versus the 1.0. Now, you can pop off the parts on a 2.0 and mix and match them within that designation, but really where you have a problem is when you try to go and put 2.0 parts on a 1.0 body or vice versa. Now, there are elements that can be used across both of them, and that's what we're going to look at today. Now, obviously, weapons are totally interchangeable. Weapons were not made as a 1.0 or 2.0 designation, so you can put them in either of the figure's hands. The only two that I would caution you, because they are larger and they do kind of stretch the hands a little bit, would be the large battle axe, like the double-bladed battle axe that we got in Series 1, along with the mage's staff, that wizard staff, that gets really, really thick, especially towards the top. So if you're going to put that either in 1.0 or 2.0 hands, it'll probably stretch it a little bit and then make it a little more difficult if you want to put other weapons in down the road. But by and large, totally interchangeable with the weapons. After that, pauldrons are probably the easiest thing to talk about. So when I talk about pauldrons, I'm talking about this shoulder armor here. If you get a Mythic Legions figure, what you'll find is the shoulder armor plugs into these ports on the back of the figure. Just plug it right in. Well, the ports for the 2.0 size and the 1.0 size are exactly the same. So you can interchange pauldrons. Now, because the 2.0 bodies and therefore the pauldrons are a little smaller, they don't really work on the 1.0 larger torsos. They look kind of comical. They don't fully come over the shoulder. On the other hand, 1.0 and those big bulky pauldrons do work really well on 2.0 figures, and we've even gotten figures that came like that right out of the gate. So this is the Thump figure. This is not customized. This is as it came as part of the Wasteland wave, and you can see that he's got these large pauldrons. This is just a goblin body. a 2.0 goblin body that it came with, but they used the larger pauldrons, and it really bulks up the character. The female dwarf character of Ragnar Stormforger is another example of a 2.0 frame that came with those big 1.0 pauldrons. So right there, you can absolutely take those larger 1.0 pauldrons and put them on a 2.0 body to get that type of look. That's one fun thing that you can do. Another thing you can do is the feet. So if you look at the way that these feet are created, they all peg into the lower leg here. And I've talked about this in the past. I did a video about swapping feet and using feet from like Lord of the Rings figures and so forth. You can certainly find that on my YouTube channel. But all feet work the same way. And what that is you've got a foot that's got this ankle piece, and this peg goes into the bottom of the leg. Now, the part that goes into the leg is different on 1.0 and 2.0. So I cannot take this foot and ankle as is and plug it into a 1.0 figure. But if you heat this up and you actually pull this ankle peg outside of the foot itself, there's another peg that goes from the ankle into the foot. And the thing is, the hole in the feet for 1.0 size and 2.0 size are almost identical. They're so close that you can absolutely swap them and use them. Now, using 1.0 feet, using 2.0 feet, which are smaller on a 1.0 body, you're going to have the same problem that I mentioned for the pauldrons. It's going to look a little too small, probably not going to make a lot of sense. But using some of those larger 1.0 feet on the 2.0 bodies gives a really fun, almost comical, oversized look. It works really, really great for goblins, for instance. So here's an example that does both of those things. This is my goblin kind of berserker. I call it a blood goblin. And I painted it this, crazy blood red, and I gave it a bunch of armor. It's got these cool claws from Wolf King Customs. But ultimately, if you look at this, you can see that this goblin, this actually started out as a thump. This started out with the same base body as the figure I just showed. It has the same pauldrons in there. All I did here was drill a couple holes and add these additional spikes that came from some Goblin Legion builder helmets. But it still gives it that bulk. And in this case, I also put these 1.0 style feet on. So if you compare the feet on the normal thump to the feet on this one, you can see how much larger these are. It gives it that really cool look. I like it a lot. I think it's a fun thing. So that's something that you can absolutely do, is if you've got these extra feet, especially if you're buying some of the third-party feet and you're pulling them off your figures, you're going to end up with these extra feet in your fodder bin. This is a really cool way that you can change up the look of some of your characters, give them, some of this different armor look, like for your goblins. So you build out that goblin army, you can build them out like that. That's a lot of fun. Moving up a little bit, we've got the loin pieces. So every figure, the way they're built is they've got this like pelvis area that has a loin piece that plugs in. The loin pieces are not the same across 1.0 and 2.0. This is just an example of a 1.0 tabard. This came from a Carpathius vampire. This is a 2.0 one. This actually came from a Xylona figure. You notice on the back they've got these pegs, and these pegs are just what plug into the pelvis. The little adapters aren't the same size. That being said, this is something you can very easily use. So the 2.0 peg is a little smaller than the 1.0. So if you just add a little dab of hot glue right there to that little peg and you pop it in, it should stay in place and you'll be able to use any of the 2.0 style loin pieces on a 1.0 body. Now, because the 1.0 ones are larger, you can't glue them into the 2.0. So what I do is, you will be modifying this permanently, and you can see what I did here. I actually already trimmed this one down a little bit. I just got an X-Acto blade, and I just trimmed down the edges of this ever so slightly to make it smaller so it would fit inside of one of these 2.0 loin pieces. So if I pull this one out of thump here, and I pop this one in, it will just fit right in place nicely. So that is something you can do. This is not fitting as is. This is a slight modification, but it still does give you a little additional display option. Now, again, moving up the body, there's also around the loin piece, there are the folds armor. So that's kind of the waist armor piece that connects when you plug the pelvis and the legs into the torso. That's the piece between them. The pelvis connector and the torso are much different between 1.0 and 2.0. So you would think that you can't use those mid pieces, those folds pieces interchangeably, but you absolutely can. Here's an example of this cool frog knight, or they actually call it a lockwoggle. This is a piece also from Wolf King Customs. And what you'll see here is I wanted him to have kind of a bulky armor. So while this uses a Goblin Legion builder body to begin with, what I've done here is not only have I used 1.0 Pauldron armor, these shoulder pads, I've also used this folds armor here, and that bulks it up. It gives it a bigger look. Very, very cool. One thing you'll notice on this as well that I don't see a lot of people doing, because it's not as easy a customization, is if you look at the lower arms on this figure, it actually is 2.0 upper arms with 1.0 lower arms inserted. So at the elbow there, you've basically got the upper arm, then you've got an elbow type piece, then you've got the hand or the gauntlet type area. What I did here was I wanted this knight type character to have these really bulky gauntlets. I wanted to use dwarf ones, but those gauntlets, as is, they wouldn't plug into the elbow connectors on 2.0. The connectors are totally different sizes. So the way this was done was I popped out the lower arm, the whole lower arm, that's the gauntlet area and the hand area and the elbow joint. I popped that out of the upper arm of a 2.0 figure. And then what I did was I heated it. So that hole, that port was really, really soft and malleable. Then I took this 1.0 lower arm and elbow piece and I shoved that in. It does fit. It's super, super tight. It's going to stay in there. The one thing is I probably could never remove this. Because I've kind of forced that in there using heat, I've probably stretched that 2.0 upper arm to the point that I could never put a normal 2.0 lower arm back in. That's fine. I have no intentions of doing that. I'm going to leave it as is. But that's another cool customization that you can consider doing. I already talked about feet. I've got another example of feet here as well. This is my kind of Fey Puck character, and you can see that I'm using these 1.0 hooves on him. Now, there are 2.0 hooved feet. I liked the look of these big chunky ones. These actually came, I believe, from a Warrior figure, and I did a little bit of painting on them. I like these chunky feet better than the smaller hooves that came with like the Xylona and the Zarya demon figure. I think those look really cool. Super easy customization. Like I said, if you just separate the piece from the ankle peg, these will pop right on. Couple more to look at. Let's talk about heads. So the neck adapter, the neck ball basically, and therefore the hole in the bottom of the heads are different from 1.0 to 2.0. So as is, you're not going to swap between them. But there are some possibilities there, once again, with a little bit of customization. So this kind of scaphoid looking skeleton, poison skeleton, whatever you want to call them, this was a character I made as part of a series I created called the Ghosts of Karamor. And what I wanted to do for this character was use this cool helmet. This helmet came from a WWE Create a Superstar set. I wanted to use it with this figure, but I found that when I put it on a 1.0 skeleton, it was the helmet was a little too small. It stretched it too much. It looked kind of comical, but it looked great on the 2.0 skeleton head. So that's exactly what I have here. This is a 1.0 body with a 2.0 skeleton head. All I did was Dremel the bottom of that head to open up that hole a little bit. And again, I do have a video on how to Dremel heads on this channel, but just that little bit of Dremeling allowed me to pop that head on. It still moves, it still stays in place, it doesn't fall off, and I can put that helmet on and it looks super, super cool. So just another example, you can swap heads between them. You're probably not going to have a ton of calls to do so. In this case, I think it works because I was putting a helmet on, so that gives it the overall size that makes it look, like it belongs. Because the 1.0 and 2.0 figures are different sizes, you will probably find that if you swap heads just as is, they might look a little disproportionate. So the last thing I'm going to show is kind of breaking out of this strictly 1.0 and 2.0. And this is a recipe that I've, again, posted on my website, posted on my Instagram, wrote something about this on Source Horseman. I owe this recipe to fellow Mythic Legions customizer Patrick Boyle. He was the first one that I remember discovering this. And it's the fact that the 2.0 torsos, and actually their arms as well, they work with the pieces from the bird figures. So prior to Mythic Legions, Four Horsemen Studios did a Kickstarter for one of their old lines called Gothotropolis. And it was a series of bird, avian type warrior characters. They did also do another set of avians under the Mythic Legions banner as part of the Etheron's Dozen wave. Either way, the birds have all the same construction, and you actually can combine them with 2.0 figures. So the peg on the legs plugs directly into a 2.0 torso. Very, very cool. If you wanted to use bird arms, the bird arms also completely plug into the torso as well here, giving you some cool display options. But this is an example of a harpy that I did. That's a real simple recipe. All it is these lower legs from the Nemetis character, the kind of gold eagle, brown eagle, and it's just plugged into the torso of a Melina figure. I just added some of these large brown wings also from the Gothotropolis release. You could also use the brown wings that are, the 2.0 style that have the larger pegs. This is actually using one of the back adapters. So if you bought Advent of Decay, it came with these little back adapters to plug in the wings. Using that there. Really, really easy recipe. Fun way that you can combine the bird figures with Mythic Legions as well. So there's a number of options right there. These are not even using custom parts or parts from other toy lines. These are completely just kit bashing or mixing and matching amongst the actual Mythic Legions line itself. There's a ton of possibilities, a ton of cool ways to combine these things. I've just barely scratched the surface here, but hopefully it gave you some inspiration for your customs. If it did and you enjoyed this video and others like it, let me know in the comments. Give the video a like. Share this video with people that may find it helpful as well. And certainly if you're not subscribed to the channel already, consider doing so you'll be notified whenever a video like this gets posted. And if you follow any of my tips here, if any of these ideas inspire you to create your own customs, when you post them, be sure to tag me, because like I always say, I can't wait to see what you make.